Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our annual COMTO Transportation Brain Trust entitled Transportation Industry Champions United Through Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I would like to first introduce our COMTO National President and CEO, Mr. Brad Mims, who will, I believe, be introducing Congresswoman, the Honorable Eleanor Holmes Norton. Brad, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating this afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to take a moment to thank Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton from the District of Columbia, my home jurisdiction, and all of the other participants from yesterday's hearing on DBE issues. Ms. Norton did an excellent job in chairing the hearing, and we certainly appreciate everything she's done for COMTO over the years. Congresswoman Norton is now in her 15th term from the District of Columbia. She serves on two committees, the Committee on Oversight and Reform and the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. She is the chair of the House Subcommittee on Highways and Transit. That's the largest and has the biggest budget of any other subcommittees on the full committee. I personally participated in meetings with her.
Will go first.
Over the years, and we look forward to her contribution. So, Congresswoman, we're tossing it over to you, and thank you again for spending the time with us this afternoon.
I'm pleased to do it, and I ask you to excuse the confusion. I'm in the middle of a hearing, and we're trying to figure when I'm supposed to ask my questions.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't want it to collide with my opening remarks, which I'm very pleased to give to you as we welcome you to today's events. And I'm pleased to join COMTO in this exploration of the challenges facing minority transportation companies and workers. I've been working on that in the bill that we have just passed. Today's conversation will help clarify what all of us, members of Congress, state and local officials, business leaders, and individuals can do to ensure that minority businesses survive and are positioned to succeed long after our nation has overcome our current health and economic crisis. While this year has brought new challenges, many of the obstacles faced by minority businesses were here long before the advent of COVID-19. Challenges such as the lack of adequate access to capital, disparities in contracting opportunities, and weaker business networks compared to others continue to be barriers to far many companies and potential entrepreneurs. Minority businesses seeking to break into and succeed in the transportation sector face these same challenges. A 2018 study conducted for the Maryland Department of Transportation examined, among other things, whether prime contractors who work with minority and women-owned firms as subcontractors on contracts with DPE-type goals ever solicit or hire those same firms to work on contracts without goals. The results of this study were alarming and all too indicative of the unequal playing field for minority businesses in many areas of our society. 69% of African-American owned companies responded that they were seldom or never solicited to work on contracts without goals in place, and 74% of African-American firms were seldom or never hired to work on goals without, on contracts without such goals. For other groups, there were comparable numbers. These numbers highlight the significant work that must continue to be done as society, if society wishes to achieve equality of opportunities. These results also make it clear that the Department of Transportation's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE program, remains an important part of achieving this goal. This is why we just held an important hearing on the DBE matter. Despite these inequities, time and again, minority business owners have demonstrated incredible levels of tenacity, resilience, and business savvy that have allowed them to defeat the odds and create community-changing, job-creating businesses. According to the Senate Committee on Small Business and Enterpriseship, over the past decade, over half of the 2 million new businesses created in the United States were created by minority entrepreneurs, resulting in 4.7 million jobs. The committee also notes that there are over 4 million minority-owned companies in the United States, with annual sales of nearly 700 billion, although this success has, of course, been impacted by the challenges of the current health and economic crises. Research by the University of California, Santa Cruz, and a report by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that 41% of Black-owned businesses have closed as a result of COVID-19, and 17% of, as compared with 17% of white-owned businesses. This number reflects the hard reality that COVID-19 affects minorities because of systemic racism far more than others. I know without question that the progress made in the minority business creation, before the health crisis is only a fraction of what can and will be accomplished as we continue to work at rectifying and persisting inequalities. That is why I've made it a priority to use my role as chair of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, Highways and Transit Subcommittee to raise awareness regarding continuing need for programs like the DBE program that play an important role in creating economic success. In addition to expanding national safety, we plan to include driver protection infrastructure, promoting a stronger focus on personal injuries and assaults, all part of our Moving Forward Act, which we have just passed. I fought hard to get $25 billion for transit agencies in the CARES Act, which Congress passed in March. This funding was flexible to be applied to various areas of need, including operating expenses, PPE for workers, and cleaning and disinfecting. In the midst of the recent COVID-19 matter, the HEROES Act passed by the House in May allocated $15.75 billion for transit agencies at a 100% federal match. We are still waiting for a broader agreement with the Senate on the new coronavirus bill, but we believe that will be forthcoming. Again, I want to welcome all of you to today's events. I look forward to continuing to collaborate with COMTO and other stakeholders to ensure the growth, advancement, and success of our nation's minority businesses. I'm just so sorry I'm being pulled out here for this hearing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, and we really appreciate all your help over the years.
So next up will be Terrence Hicks, who will be introducing our moderator. Terrence?
Thank you. My name is Terrence Hicks of Metro Strategies. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce today's moderator from the great state of Michigan, Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist. Lieutenant Governor has dedicated his career to fixing problems for hardworking families, from spearheading campaigns for equality and justice to harnessing technology to solve everyday problems for Detroiters. His focus has consistently remained on serving the public by getting things done. Bringing Michigan's state government fully into the 21st century is a top priority for Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. He brings a lifetime of experience to the task, receiving his first computer at age 5 and setting up a computer lab in the Community Recreation Center using computers that he built himself at age 16. Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist studied computer engineering and computer science at the University of Michigan, Go Blue. Graduated with honors and later had a successful career as a software engineer at Microsoft, helping to build SharePoint into the fastest growing product in the company's history. During his time in Seattle, Gilchrist served as social media manager for the 2008 Obama campaign in Washington, where he helped launch a national message program to recruit volunteers. He later served as the first director of new media at the Center for Community Change in Washington, D.C., and spent 3 years as national campaign director at MoveOn.org. This is where he spearheaded equity and justice programs or campaigns, including fighting to expand Medicaid in states with Republican governors, like at the time, Michigan. This eventually led to his serving as the first ever Director of Innovation and Emerging Technology for the city of Detroit, where he used public data and technology to address everyday concerns the community was facing, including an app to report issues such as broken fire hydrants, potholes, and broken streetlights. This mindset of harnessing technology to solve problems will play a critical role in finding solutions to improve the lives of people across the state. Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist and his wife, Ellen, currently reside in Detroit, where they are raising their twins, Emily and Garlin III, and newborn daughter, Ruby. Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist also serves as the chair of the Michigan Coronavirus Task Force on Racial Disparities. Last, let me take the opportunity to wish Emily, Garlin III, and Lieutenant Governor an early happy birthday. Lieutenant Governor.
Terrence, thank you so much for that introduction. I want to thank COMTO, President Mims, for the invitation to participate in this event. I know that Congresswoman Norton, Holmes Norton, had to leave to go do her job as a Congresswoman, but President Mims wanted to let you know that I am a former Washington, D.C. resident. As you heard in that introduction, I lived in D.C. for 5 years, both in Northwest and Northeast D.C., so she was my Congresswoman. And I appreciated her service and leadership and example as a public servant during my time there. I want to welcome everybody to this important conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I will serve as your moderator. And I want to let you know, before I give some brief remarks, who is joining me on this august panel. We have leaders from around the country who will be providing insights based on their background and experience, and I think also with an eye toward the future about how we can meet the goals that we share. We have Ms. Sandra D. Norman, who is the Division Administrator at the Virginia Department of Civil Rights. We have Mr. Michael Garner, who is the Chief of Diversity for the New York City MTA. We have Mr. David DeLuz, who is the Deputy Director for Civil Rights for Caltrans, and Ms. Tamela Lee, who is the Vice President of Business Diversity at DFW International. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of them, and I'll bring them forward in a moment. I want to speak, this question really of diversity, equity, and inclusion is one that has been, really present, I think more present in our national conversation and our community conversations across the country for the last 10 years or so. But I want to talk about really what I think those are all about. This question of inclusion has been one that certainly the members of COMTO and those who you represent and work with, this is always in front of mind for you, because you have always believed that, what we want is an opportunity to compete, an opportunity to demonstrate skill, talent, efficacy, impact, outcomes, but that some systems that exist today, many systems were designed to exclude too many people and too many businesses from those opportunities. Well, the thing that I learned in my career is that, while systems may exist in a certain way, those systems do not have to be that way. They were not ordained by God. They instead were put in place by a group of people who made a specific set of choices. And that means that a different set of people, a broader set of people, a more enlightened set of people, a more diverse set of people can make a different set of choices that can lead to a different set of possibilities and a different set of potential outcomes for our people, for our communities, for our businesses, and for those who are experiencing the things that we build, our transportation infrastructure. And as someone who's had a very interesting and evolved relationship with transit and transportation, I want to share a little bit about that with you because it's part of what informs my perspective. As you heard, I'm from Detroit. I had a relationship with cars, as you would assume I would, being from Detroit, getting one when I was 16 and working hard for it to pay for it. And that was part of my identity. But ultimately, thanks to, frankly, a challenge from my wife, she challenged me when I was living in the Seattle area to take advantage of the fact that as a Microsoft employee, I had access to the transportation network. And should be utilizing it rather than relying on sitting in traffic. And so I took that challenge, and it really changed my perspective. So I hadn't really ridden public buses since I got a car, but recognizing that this infrastructure unlocks opportunity and possibility and productivity for all of our communities when it is truly accessible to all people. And so this led to, when we were in Washington, D.C., we actually were car-free for most of that time. And even living in the city of Detroit with our two babies, our children, we actually were car-free in the city of Detroit, doing what we needed to do for 2.5 years. Being really, I think, examples of what the future of mobility can look like in terms of a mix of solutions that can meet different challenges, from riding buses to shared vehicle infrastructure and everything in between. And then when we did acquire a vehicle, we are now on our third electrified plug-in hybrid vehicle. And so recognizing that that is a part of our future as well. So I bring all that perspective to say that, we have an opportunity as we are developing solutions to meet a pretty broad array of needs of people. But the only way you can really, truly respond to a diverse market is with a diverse set of businesses and a diverse set of entrepreneurs and a diverse set of service providers, because that is where the ideas that are frankly big enough, that are flexible enough, and that are responsive enough, that's where they're going to come from. In the state of Michigan, we certainly have tried to think of equity and inclusion as being essential to the mobility and transportation infrastructure solutions of today and tomorrow. And we hosted what we call the Michigan Mobility Challenge. It was an $8 million challenge last year. We sought out technology that we would use to address mobility gaps for persons with disabilities, for seniors, for veterans, and for people who just haven't had full access to mobility solutions. And so we developed as part of that challenge, that the companies that won, they had solutions that were directly responsive to some of these concerns. Things like this autonomous wheelchair securement, which provided greater independence for people who use wheelchairs. This autonomous wheelchair securement has been used in the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. Ann Arbor is the city where the University of Michigan is, and it requires no assistance from the driver. We had solutions like Looking Bus, which uses sensors and an app to help people with visual, or cognitive impairments navigate the transit experience with less assistance. Our capital area transit authority in Ingham County, which is where Lansing, our state capital, is using this product to protect and help riders to find their way to their bus stop, let riders know when buses are approaching, notifying the drivers that the rider is at the stop, and ensuring that riders get on the correct bus if the stop serves multiple routes. We also had a solution from a company called Pedestrian, like pedestrian, but with a B. And Pedestrian is a driverless delivery solution, which can bring things like food or medication or telemedicine services even to people who are homebound or don't have internet access. And it's being tested in Ann Arbor, working closely with the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, especially in the medical scenarios. There was a Wheels to Work solution, which created a mobile app for improved access and response time for people who need accessible transit to get to jobs and economic opportunity. This is being operated currently by the Hope Network in Kent County, Michigan, where the city of Grand Rapids is. And then finally, I want to highlight a solution from Pratt & Miller Engineering that piloted an autonomous vehicle shuttle at Western Michigan University's campus in Kalamazoo. I got a chance to actually be there for the release of this project, and it was really quite extraordinary because it included participation from students who have disabilities. Those students were not only able to provide feedback into how the vehicle could address the challenges they face, but they also got valuable hands-on work experience in the development of the shuttles themselves. When we are designing for the people who have the most significant or significant barriers to participation in our markets and in mobility, and frankly in our economy, we're going to come up with better solutions. And as service providers, as leaders in the public and private sector, represented by our panelists today, you're going to see how they, I believe, all are also creating space and opportunity for, whether it's members of COMTO or other businesses and entrepreneurs and just people with ideas will be able to bring those forth in a way that will solve for the broadest set of challenges that we face. The last thing I want to speak to is this pandemic. You heard the Congresswoman give the statistics about the pandemic's impact on communities of color and on businesses of color. I'm the lead of our Michigan Coronavirus Task Force on Racial Disparities, which has been our state's really full-throated approach to try to address and eradicate these disparities when it comes to the mortality rate of COVID-19, but also the overall impact of the pandemic on our communities. And we have really centered the experience of, for example, both transit and transportation providers and consumers in our state response. One of the things that we recognize is that those people who are working in transportation, those jobs are critical to protecting and sustaining life every day, but especially during the midst of this pandemic that we are all confronting. But we did not have adequate workplace protocols to protect those people in the beginning of this pandemic. So as a task force, we helped to prioritize our state response to develop these protocols to protect our workers, to protect our bus drivers, to protect the support staff, to protect those who are making sure that the buses are running on time, so to speak. We also made sure that there were protocols and PPE available for people who were taking advantage of public transportation here, recognizing that many people of color and many lower income people, especially in cities like Detroit where I live, where 30% of people do not have access to a private car, continued to rely on public transportation during the pandemic to get to the grocery store, to get food, to get to their places of work where they still had to go to work, and everything in between. So making sure that those things were available to people was really important, everything from masks to PPE and hand sanitizer. And so we really tried to set the standard for how we're providing access to those things for people in Michigan. This is important because it saved lives. And this is part of why our response in Michigan to COVID-19, we have been able to show that we have flattened those racial disparities when it comes to both the infection and mortality rate of COVID-19 in our state. And we believe some of the lessons that we've learned can be helpful for other states and frankly for our federal response to this pandemic. So with that, I just want to make sure we all recognize that we have a role to play in making sure that we are reducing the disparities and access to opportunity for those who want to and are able to provide solutions in the technology and transportation spaces and sectors. And so with that, I would like to bring in our panelists to talk about these issues and perhaps introduce themselves and tell their own stories and narratives, and then we'll get into some discussion. So I'd like to start with Ms. Sandra D. Norman from the Virginia Department of Civil Rights.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. I'm Sandra D. Norman. I'm the Division Administrator for the Civil Rights Program at the Virginia Department of Transportation. I've been in this space for about 32 years in the employment side of the house and about 8 years in the highway construction side of the house. It gives me great pleasure to be one of the transportation industry's champions today, and I want to thank COMTO and the panelists that before you today for the invite and the opportunity to discuss this very important topic. VDOT is the third largest transportation agency in the country behind our neighbor, North Carolina and Texas. We have a dedication that we're dedicated to creating jobs by creating opportunities for businesses to grow and new businesses to start up, expanding contract opportunities for small women and minority-owned businesses. We want to create opportunities for individuals who want to have a career in our industry. We do this through outreach. For example, some of our pipeline programs, we deliberately have relationships and connections with high schools across the state. And we are continued to be committed to our veterans hiring program. The Commonwealth of Virginia's small businesses make a significant contribution to the state's economy and play a critical role in job creation and opportunity throughout the state. VDOT is committed to identifying opportunities and implementing programs through the federal DBE program, as well as our small women-owned and minority-owned business program and our Virginia Small Business Enterprise Program. But I wanted to share something about the resiliency of who we are as an agency. While this has been an unprecedented time or unprecedented challenges and the anxiety of our employees, the resiliency of our VDOT family has been remarkable. There have been changes to the ways every employee works, and those changes happen very quickly. Fortunately for us at VDOT, we are nimble. We have been seeking ways to modernize how we work, knowing that the future of work was going to look quite differently. So the VDOT of Tomorrow initiative, we started that about a year ago, and it has helped VDOT transition to our new normal, including new methods of working, collaborating, communicating, and delivering our programs and our services. The main pillars of the VDOT of Tomorrow initiative is aimed to transform the agency through preparing our people, modernizing our methods, and empowering innovation. This initiative is focused on all employees, both whose work that must be conducted on site and in the field, and those who have office-focused work. We are seeking ways to improve safety, efficiency, and effectiveness in all areas of VDOT's employees' work. This initiative also continues to enhance the ongoing efforts across VDOT to improve diversity, equity, inclusion. So while we continue to operate from a continuity of operations plan, this is so important because we have paralleled these things that we're learning, the best practices, onto our DBEs and our small businesses as we drive equity, diversity, and inclusiveness. So I look forward to the continued dialogue as we go on with the program this afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity again to be with you today.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate your perspective. Next, let's go to Mr. Michael Garner from New York City MTA.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you see me? Doesn't look that way.
Not completely.
All right. Not completely, right? How's that? Better? Okay. I'm not Michael Garner. Michael Garner got pulled away for an important meeting with the chairman of the MTA. My name is Ray Burke, and I'm the Deputy Chief Diversity Officer at the MTA in charge of contract compliance. Obviously, I won't be able to add as much as Michael Garner would as far as what we've accomplished here at the MTA, as far as diversity is inclusion. But from a contract compliance perspective, our goal has always to maintain inclusion. As the previous panelists have mentioned, the COVID-19 issue has been very challenging, especially here in New York State, which most people would think that would have a negative impact on the way we would look at inclusion, but not here at the MTA. During this challenging times, we were able to award millions of dollars of contracts to state certified MWBE, federally certified DBE firms to help with the cleaning of subways, providing equipment to fight this pandemic. As far as regular contract compliance, I've been working in the unit for a little over 5 years, and Mr. Garner has been here for about 10 years or so. When he first took over, our inclusion numbers, as far as in state-funded contracts, were basically in single digits. It's basically in single digits, just like on the federal side was also single digits. We've grown over the last 10 years to double-digit figures. Matter of fact, as far as the state agencies are concerned, we are the highest agency as far as MWBE contract compliance is concerned. And we've, the state compliance goal is 30%, and we're practically at 28%, knocking on the door of the goal. On the federal side, we've exceeded our goal. Over the last few years, we've achieved about 27% in DBE compliance. So as far as inclusion is concerned, that's our main priorities. A lot of contractors sometimes have issues meeting their goals and sometimes request waivers. That's a no-no in Mr. Garner's vocabulary. So we always force the contractors to make the most positive, good faith effort to provide inclusion. So that's what I have to add at this time. Mr. Garner will be back, so when he does come back, you can always circle back to him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir, for pinch hitting very ably. I appreciate you. Let's now go to Mr. David DeLuz from Caltrans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. My name is David DeLuz, and I'm the Deputy Director for Civil Rights at Caltrans. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the panel. You know, like everyone else on this panel, we've been experiencing literally an unprecedented time, facing unprecedented challenges. In addition to all of the social justice and civil unrest up and down the state, we've also been experiencing record wildfires, which have actually impacted the world in terms of the smoke and the air quality and its impacts. We've also, I think, responded very successfully to the challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic. These are issues that exacerbate the inequity and the challenges that we see with our DBE firms that are seeking to do business with Caltrans. We contract about $4 to $5 billion a year, and about 500 to 600 million of that goes to specifically DBE firms. We have a commitment to ensuring that we expand and promote the involvement of disadvantaged business firms. Our current performance in terms of DBE utilization is around 17.6%. We are very excited about that goal, but we realize that there are additional challenges when you look under the hood of those. And when you look under the hood of those numbers, we recognize that there's more work that we can do for African American and Latino firms. One of the questions that we were asked to address in the panel is, you know, how are we responding in this COVID environment, and how are our partner firms responding in this COVID environment? Well, we can tell you that they have been hit very hard. They've been hit very hard, and we are trying to find ways to work with them to energize our communication. We have a commitment to expanding equity and inclusion and diversity in our contracting, trying to identify promising practices and engaging our communities to make sure that they have the opportunity to participate fully. And we've enacted a couple of strategies and best practices. That includes a top-down, bottom-up approach. We didn't just respond because of the unfortunate deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. We didn't just respond then. Back in January of 2019, upon his inauguration, Governor Newsom initiated an advanced effort to promote diversity and inclusion, looking for the best talent to come into the administration. Our California Transportation Secretary, David Kim, and also Caltrans Director Tokes Amashakan have made significant personal and professional investments in prioritizing and leaning into strategies to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion among all of our stakeholders. We're listening and taking direction from our stakeholders, the public opinion leaders, our employees, and internal leaders. We've also prioritized intentionality, being explicit and intentional about our efforts. We've drafted a Caltrans equity statement. We are infusing diversity and equity and addressing structural racism in our leadership practices. Our strategic alignment now includes and incorporates goals around equity. And we've made budget commitments to fund efforts and programs that are going to promote the engagement and involvement of minority firms that can help contribute to getting California back on the road again. We've made significant investments in training our leadership and our line staff by participating in the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. It's been a multi-year effort to drive and promote equity, thought leadership from our across various agencies in California, and also down into the organization at Caltrans. We've also been moving from symbolism to substance. You know, one of the things we've done is we've renamed the Office of Business and Economic Opportunity. We've renamed it the Office of Civil Rights, getting it back to its core function. We've created an office on race and equity, elevating our EEO officer and, quite frankly, our civil rights officer to strategic leadership levels. We have continued to develop listening sessions with our community so that we can confront the history of Caltrans and how it served to divide communities. And we're trying to take that lesson from history and learn from it so that as we move forward into this record period of investment in transportation, that we can do it right. And so we're excited about the work that we're doing. We know that we have a long way to go, but we are really focused on trying to make sure that we can promote DBEs and make sure that they are certified, qualified, and competitive to work on helping to get California back on the road again. So with that, I'll cede my time and turn it back over to the Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for the insight and the perspective. I know that our infrastructure's in really good hands. And so I next want to go to Miss Tamela Lee from DFW International.
Thank you so much. I'm Tamela Lee, Vice President of Business Diversity and Development for DFW International Airport. I've been there for 8 years. I've been in the industry a long time. Won't say how many years. That would definitely date me. I oversee all of our supplier diversity programs, our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, our Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. And we just, about a year ago, commissioned a disparity study, and proud to roll out this year and receive board approval, our new Minority and Women Business Enterprise Program. I also oversee the Title VI coordination efforts for the airport. Just a few facts about the airport. We were in 2019, we were recognized as Airport of the Year. We are like a city. We have our own zip code. We have our own city designation, police, fire, emergency, medical departments. We opened in 1974, and we are the first carbon neutral airport in North America and largest in the world. So obviously with COVID, it's no secret that it's really impacted the commercial aviation industry. Our industry saw a decrease of about 95%, which was the lowest point in mid-April. During that time, we were seeing about 10,000 passengers a day compared to average of 200,000 prior to COVID-19. The trend is now improving, but we are nowhere back to normal. The stark decrease in traffic obviously has impacted DFW's revenues, but the airport remains financially secure. We began the year with one of the strongest balance sheets in the industry, and we've worked very aggressive to manage our costs. In addition, we were fortunate to receive $300 million in the CARES Act funding, and it was enough to cover lost revenues for all of 2020 and a portion for 2021. We have been able to commit to no layoffs and no furloughs or decreases in pay and benefits to our board employees. DFW did have to suspend or defer some contracts to reduce expenses. And of course, many concessionaires closed due to low traffic count. Many of our MWBEs did not have an opportunity to participate in the SBA economic injury disaster loans or the PP loans. However, we recognize our role as a job creator and a generator, so we've been able to move forward with some projects and ensuring that there is MWBE participation on those projects. We provide our partners with timely updates on what we're doing. We've been able to offer PPE assistance to ensure the health and safety of our partners, as well as our employees. And we are still committed to MWBE inclusion in all of our airport contracts. Through August 31st, 20 of this year, for our expenditures for our disadvantaged small business enterprises, we had an expenditure of $169 million, with 34% participation from MWBEs. Our concessionaires, while the revenues have been down through 8/31/20, they still have been able to generate $119 million in revenue, which is 45% of that revenue coming from ACDBEs. We continue to work with departments. Any contracts where they think there's going to be a reduction, they need to notify us, and we're ensuring that no impact is going to happen to our MWBEs or minimize the impact to MWBEs as much as we can. We started our capacity building series to help existing vendors as well as new entrants into the airport, which is a 6-month-long training program. And for the first half of the year, the topics we tried to cover the SBA economic injury disaster loan, best practices for continuity, capital solutions during COVID-19, insurance coverage for businesses before, during, and after COVID-19, financial forecasting, a road to recovery and growth. For our concessionaires, we've done $75 million in rent abatement, reduction of employee transportation charges, and we've allowed concessionaires to adjust hours or close without penalty. And of course, health and safety is always our responsibility, and I'm gonna kind of stop there because I'll get into some of these as we go through the panel discussions. But if you ever, hopefully when travel comes back, we began cleaning and sterile sanitation. We have a cleaning strike team that consists of 165 members. We've enhanced cleaning at TSA security and customs checkpoints. We do sanitation every day, decontamination if anyone had potential exposure to COVID-19. We have smart restrooms that offer touchless experience that includes automated soap dispensers, paper towel dispensers, faucets. We even have now, you can see how many people are in there and where the next restroom is if it's too busy for you to go in there. We also ensure that employees with direct interactions with customers were wearing face masks, they have plexiglass, signage to encourage social distancing, limited seating at our food and beverage terminals to 75%. So we just want you to know that DFW is committed to being a leader in the recovery efforts, and the airport is financially stable, and we expect to outpace other airports for recovery. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and COMTO, for allowing me to be part of this panel.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. And I want to ask a couple questions. I also want to encourage, there are some people who are starting to put questions in the chat. Thank you for that. We're going to get to those questions in a minute. I want to ask a few questions for the panel. One of the things I appreciate about all of you is your depth and diversity of experience in your organizations, in the industry. This is really important. I'd like to ask all of you if you could maybe give me a minute or two on, though, given that experience, you've learned and seen a lot of things, and I bet that at different points in your career, you have had to rethink some of the habits that you had developed, or you had to revisit an assumption that you'd made. And as I certainly, I believe that it's safe to say that many of us have had to face unprecedented things that we have not seen before, either in terms of type or in terms of depth or degree during 2020. I'd be curious if you could name something that you have had to rethink this year, and how that has helped you, create more space and opportunity for diverse entrepreneurs and diversity, equity, and inclusion in the space that we all occupy to make sure that we have equitable opportunity for more people. So I'll throw it to any one of you to start, and if no one volunteers, then I'm going to pick somebody.
This is David. I think for me, one of the things that has become painfully obvious is the lack of access to capital and how it is impacting minority firms. They are in large measure, the research and experience will tell you that they are usually undercapitalized to start with. And then to deal with the COVID-19 and the economic downturn that was associated with it. And then in California, we've also got wildfires displacing communities. It is literally quite obvious that the whole notion of being a paycheck away from disaster is really real, even for the most successful minority entrepreneur that's out here trying to participate in these projects that we have to rebuild our transportation system. There needs to be a more central focus on improving strategy, on creating strategies and improving access to capital, or changing the very formation of how we require insurance and bonding, et cetera, on our projects. Additionally, I think the resources that go to, pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship programs, et cetera, I don't think are really enough on the workforce side to really be able to matriculate the numbers of Black and Latino folks into the trades. As a former president, CEO of the Greater Sacramento Urban League, I've run a number of workforce programs, and the level of underfunding that goes into those programs and the lack of investment in those programs means that participants have to choose between participating, 20, 30 hours a week in their pre-apprenticeship program and taking care of their families. They literally have to uproot and move home, or they're literally sleeping in their cars while they're trying to get training. And then when they get training, they go into the union halls and they sit there and they wait to get called for a job. The clock is ticking, rent is due, and it's just a real challenge. So then they revert back to going to work at a lower wage job. So I think that the whole strategy around investment, from workforce training and development all the way through to supporting our entrepreneurs, needs to change.
David, thank you for that. The latter problem that you described is something that we certainly have worked to prioritize in Michigan, the real accessibility to actually these sort of training opportunities and continuing education opportunities. Because one of the ways you can get an idea for the thing you want to start, or what you want to transfer into, is by having access to training and a new set of skills. And so in Michigan, we actually just passed a program called Reconnect, which provides a tuition-free pathway to training and associate's degrees for any adult in the state of Michigan. And that's targeted specifically in those areas and toward those communities of people who have not had access to these opportunities. And we're making an investment in our people because we know that it will create opportunity. And we believe that that can be more sustainable. And that's something that you can do and not have to worry about the costs. You can keep your work and not have to choose between furthering your career and feeding your family. Does someone else want to chime in on this question?
Sure. Hi, this is Sandra Norman. I want to take it from a very personal standpoint. It had me questioning my support, my knowledge, my advocacy, my experience, my role in the civil rights arena, being the civil rights director. And I personally had to say, am I cut out for this? And is what I'm doing making a difference? because I had to deal with my own internal pain through this pandemic, through the unrest, and what was going on. As you know, that the first EDI law was the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And then the other laws that came, the Americans Disability Act. So we've been in this space with equity, diversity, and inclusion. But to see where we were in 2020, I had to sit back and I really had to draw strength on my colleagues across the country to say, hey, I'm ready to, you know, I got 32 years, I'm ready to walk away from it. It says, make me want to holler, throw hands up in the air. That's where I was. And so I had to be honest with where I was. I had to be honest in that space and be able to walk through that emotional side, that personal side, and really be able to focus on why I'm important in this space, why I need to continue to do what I do so that we can make sure that these disadvantaged businesses and these small businesses continue to get a piece of that pie. But it was really a personal that I had to settle with myself first.
Thank you for that. That's a testimony right there, Sandra. I appreciate that. Let's have one more panelist weigh in on this question if you have a thought, and then I got another question for everybody. All right, then I want to move to a different question. You know, all of you have sizable workforces that you serve. And I'm just curious about how you have approached safety. You know, one of the things in my work on racial disparities in Michigan, people of color are overrepresented in these frontline jobs in this sector. You know, when we're talking about those who are working on the front line or in service in many of our transportation and transit agencies and authorities. And I'm just curious how y'all have approached that during the pandemic and how the choices that you've made to keep people safe from the pandemic will impact your workplace safety practices going forward, even beyond COVID.
Well, I'll start. I think I went through some of them, but as an airport with the traveling public, flights haven't stopped. While some of us can enjoy working from home, others actually need to be at the airport. We have TSA agents that need to be at the airport. You've got people that still need to clean the airport. So we've provided them with all the tools necessary for them to remain safe. So we provided them with masks, gloves, sanitation. We've remarked the entire airport to ensure that our employees remain safe. Even within the office buildings, we've done videos on how to approach people if they're not wearing their mask and how to do it without yelling at them. We put signage up on going up and down the stairs and how many folks in the elevators. The other thing that we've done is we are mandated by FAA to do site visits and to go out and visit the concessionaires, go out on the construction job site. And we just can't do that anymore. So, you know, we're doing a lot of Zoom, a lot of team, trying to keep workers safe, trying to keep our concessionaires safe and our construction workers safe, because you're right. When you go to an airport, when you see the baggage handlers and everyone else, even to the employees in the concessions, they're mainly minorities. And we want to make sure that the traveling public's safe, our construction workers are safe, and the employees are safe. So those are some of the measures we've enacted.
Yeah, I gotta wait for it to focus.
Okay. Yours, there it is.
There you go. Mr. Garner, you trying to chime in?
Yes, I am, and I'm here. I am, and I'm not Ray Burke, but I'm Mike Garner. But the thing we have here is we have very dedicated and able staff. Well, let me just talk about the MTA for a second. We are a $1 trillion organization when you factor in all of our real estate holdings and equipment. We are the largest transportation network in North America. 72,000 employees, 5,000 square miles, and we move 6.2 million customers per day. For the first time in history, we have shut down our 24-hour service from 1 a.m. until 5 a.m. in the morning. We disinfect all of our subway cars and our stations under our new safety protocol with respect to COVID-19. And as Ray indicated, that we have the ability to procure a record number of equipment and services from a New York State certified MWBE firms. We did that. We brought $230 million worth of COVID equipment, masks, supplies, and services. 73 million of that went to certified minority women-owned firms for 32%. So the message that we sent is that we change the way that we do business, because just because it is an emergency declaration does not mean that MWBE firms need not to apply. And it's a win-win, because we're spending taxpayers' monies. We are obligated to spend those monies in a cost-effective manner, but we change the way that we do business, and we spend those funds in an inclusive manner. So shutting down our system from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, disinfecting all of our subway cars and subway stations, which number 468 subway stations across the 5 boroughs in the city of New York. And so we continue to do that in light of COVID-19.
Thank you, sir. So I want to. So a couple of you touched on this, but I would like to speak to the moment that we're in. You know, we are experiencing, I think, a generational call for racial justice, and I wonder, just to make a connection. A lot of times when we're talking about access to opportunity and those who have been designed out of opportunity, one of the ways that our communities can observe that most viscerally is in where transportation and transit services are available and where they are not. And I know that certainly in many cities and states across the country, as the calls for racial justice and the calls for evolution in policing and reinvesting in public safety in a broader set of ways ring loud and ring true, there have also been calls for equity in transportation and transit. And so those have been renewed. And so I wonder how any of you feel or could speak to, you know, as many of those calls will be ongoing, unfortunately, as we have continued visible instances of brutality in our communities. But as those calls may start to, the volume of them may start to decrease, et cetera, do you think there is space created for a new understanding of transportation equity? And if so, what does that look like in your particular jurisdictions?
This is David DeLuz with Caltrans. I can tell you that at Caltrans, one of the things that we've done over the last 2 years, in addition to participating in the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, we've done a lot of learning, we've done a lot of listening. And I think one of the most significant things that we've done is we've created the Caltrans Office of Race and Equity, and we placed it not in the Office of Civil Rights, not in our EEO office, but we've placed it in our planning office. And that speaks to the strategy of adding in and not adding on. And by that, I mean, we are incorporating and infusing this office focused on equity strategies, planning, outcomes, and metrics. We placed it in the nerve center of our organization, not on the periphery where a lot of DEI initiatives go to die. I think that placing it in the Office of Planning is significant, and it is a significant both symbolic and substantive message going out to our employees and our stakeholders and our customers to let them know that we're serious about rethinking the way in which we've delivered transportation services and infrastructure to the community. We understand that we have to first acknowledge the past, and then we have to develop strategies where we listen I don't know, this is kind of revolutionary, but listening to the people who are actually utilizing the services and actually trying to create strategies that respond to their needs. I think that's been a real key, I think, philosophical emphasis, particularly under our director, Tokes Amashakan. We are really focused on trying to identify best practices. So we're going to be calling all over the United States, looking at the best practices that our partners and colleagues have been doing all over the state. And we want to take those and put them on steroids in California so that we can make sure that future projects that we create work with communities and not against communities, and that we're investing in all of our constituents that are going to be utilizing our services. You know, this is not a time this is a time to really lean in on equity, and it's got to be placed in a position where it's not an add-on, but it is a substantive part of the systemic features of our planning agencies. So it can be infused in our not only in our philosophies and our mission, vision, and goals, but also in our policies, in our budget priorities, and in our outcomes and metrics.
Thank you for that, David. Sandra, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I wanted to, I said earlier with VDOT, we started the VDOT of Tomorrow initiative about a year ago, but about 5 years ago, we had a workforce engagement plan where we took some measurable situations within VDOT, put some real measures and thought process and strategies to those, and have been successful in implementing those. But one of the things that I've worked hard on, and I'm very fortunate at VDOT, the first thing I had to have commitment from our leadership. And so it's real important to me where civil rights lay in terms of the Virginia Department of Transportation. I have support from our Secretary of Transportation, Shannon Valentine, our Commissioner, Steve Bridge, and my boss, who is the Chief Deputy of Transportation, so Commissioner of Transportation. So to have that engagement with our organizational leadership early and often in critical matters impacting civil rights, we were able to come together and really communicate and talk about the impacts of everything that was going on. And we were able to say it without any holds bars, if you will, however, in a respectful and diplomatic manner, but them recognizing the pain that I was experiencing. And so to have that support. So this is not a new initiative for VDOT. It is a continuation of what I'm supposed to do anyway. But I'm not a lot of DOTs around the country has that kind of support. And I'm fortunate that I do have that continued support from the executive leadership.
Thank you for that. I mean, that leadership, that is really important. And so another question, I guess, building on that, Sandra, is, many of you have spoken to not wanting these diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to be, ornamental, not to be off to the side, but to be really infused. I mean, David, you spoke to this being really infused into the planning, which is, you're right, that's the bread and butter of any transportation organization. I wonder if y'all could speak to, again, given the depth of your experiences, how do you manage up when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because you have to do that, right? You have to make sure, so, as you mentioned, Sandra, everyone may not be as fortunate to have that kind of buy-in or alignment at the highest levels of their organizations or in their governments, et cetera. But I would imagine that there was a point in your career and in others when you did not have that. And so you were trying to manage up to make sure that you could get the space created to be able to do what you needed to do to create that space for others. And so I would appreciate all of your perspectives and experiences on managing up for diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I think our participants could probably all benefit from just hearing an array of perspectives on that question.
You're exactly right. But to know me, I really don't take no for an answer. If I have to continue to go back and continue to state the position, and I always look at 49 CFR 26 that tell us what our position should be. And so we are one of the largest recipient of federal funds. And so we have to make sure that we are in compliance with what that legislation says that we are supposed to do. And so if I don't have it today, I continue until I get it. We just can't just stop. You just have to become your own advocate about what you need within the organization. And I also established on my own an executive orientation to include any of the senior leadership members that came into VDOT. I did a whole civil rights orientation to them to show that we are connected in the planning and project delivery. Just like we're just as important as construction, local assistance programs across the whole spectrum of VDOT. And so I elevated who we were and needed to be in that process. So I just didn't take no, and I just didn't take them kind of putting us off to the side. I continue to reiterate what the 49 CFR stated and our responsibility to that.
Let me say also that I can ask 3 questions to any organization, both public or private, and determine how effective that diversity or MWDB program is. The person who directs your program, who is that person reporting to? If the person is not reporting to the top, then that program is not going to be effective. What is the number of your staff? And what is your budget? Because at the end of the day, you need to have adequate staff, adequate budget, and a clear path to the CEO or the president of the organization. So I report directly to the CEO. But I had that relationship, and I was just in a meeting with him about 10 minutes ago, and we had an issue. And I said, well, I would circle back around to you in a very, very short period of time, outlining the issue, but giving us at least 2 or 3 options that we can solve the issue. And so great things have started happening here, is that we basically became the first government agency in this region to pay, not award, but to pay in excess of $1.1 billion to minority women-owned firms last year. $1.1 billion in payments. 38% of that went to Black and Hispanic-owned businesses in the tri-state region here. And so we have had the ability to, when something was in violation of a state law, we went to the state capitol, got sponsors in both of our houses, and had our program signed into state law by the governor. And so you have to have access, you have to have resources, and you have to have the staff that's going to be able to shatter those glass ceilings and barriers. And also, I would just like to give a special shout out to both Brad Mims of the incredible work that he's doing at COMTO National, and our local president, Rich Watson of COMTO New York, who we work in tandem together in order to drive effective change. And one last thing, we have a $54 billion capital plan. No contract is awarded or goes to the board without my sign off. And then it goes to the board to be approved. And our board members, they ask questions about the MW and DBE goals. And so we are held accountable, and great things are happening.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, in response to your question, for those that don't have that direct line, I think both Sandra and Michael, hit it right on the head. You've got to have that direct line authority. You have to have the budget resources, and you have to have the personnel resources. But many of us probably are not in positions to be able to do that. And your question was about managing up. And I think one of the things that we need to do is that to take Michael's point, if you're not plugged in at the top, your program probably isn't operating very well. And so I think one of the things that you can do is, if you're trying to leverage whatever power you have, is to within your own sphere of influence, highlight the work that other successful agencies are doing and create discussions around that and highlight that work so that folks will start asking questions. Well, you know, why aren't we doing these things? And then you can point to the structure, the budget. It's going to take some research and the ability to put together a strategic plan and a vision and a comparative document and analysis that can show them, look, if you plug me in with the CEO, if you give me the budget and the staff that I really need to do this right, I can do it. And you show those examples. You do the small things. I think what Sandra had mentioned, you know, operating within her own sphere to communicate the good news, right? To evangelize this issue of diversity and equity, right? We have to tell everybody that we can and be able to message correctly and properly and consistently about the good things that can happen if we put the emphasis and the budget and make the commitments that we need in order to do that. And it takes time and it takes effort, but I think the more we understand what our partners are doing, that's why I like organizations like COMTO, right? Because we can talk amongst ourselves and find out who's doing what and how they're doing it. And we can then leverage that in our own organizations to drive the needle and move it in the direction that we want it to be moved in.
David and Mr. Lieutenant Governor, I want to lean in on this very point if I could. Here lately, and especially during times of COVID and the civil unrest that's going around the country, we have to lean in. We have to be very forthright with the agencies that many of you are part of to make sure that those entities within your agencies or the other interest groups are doing the right thing. And I know that I was with my chairman on a call yesterday, and he kind of lit a person up yesterday because this particular organization has had time to deal with this issue and they've been stagnant. And he put them on point. And that's what all of us need to do at this particular point. This is the time to do it. The time to go for it is now. And as we're going for it, everybody has their way of doing things and everybody has their way of communicating. But put your head forward, lean forward, and go for it. And COMTO's here for you. So I just wanted to add that if I could. Thank you, guys.
And I know we're running out of time. I want to ditto what everyone else has said. We're an authority, so we're operated by a board. And it's wonderful because the board actually buys into the diversity program and often will ask the hard questions of contracts. But as far as managing up, I would say stand firm. And a lot of times if it's a regulation or an ordinance, you need to make sure people understand that. I want to ditto the storytelling. We give the board expenditure reports so they can see what we're doing. We do economic impact studies on what MWBEs bring to the community. We work with the other departments, every single item. I don't care if it's commercial development, legal service, advertising services. They come through us for a goal for those types of projects. And if you're managing up isn't working for you, involve your community. They can also help you manage up. It help you tell your story. So I just want to end there, but I did what everyone else wanted to say, but I just wanted to come back to managing up.
Thank you, Tamela. Thank you all for your perspectives on this. We have a few more minutes, and so I want to get to some of these questions that we've gotten in the chat. And so the first one I want to go to, which I bet I think will arouse some, passionate responses. Many of you may have seen, this is from Larry Delgado. So thank you, Larry, for submitting this question. And it reads that there is a recent story from Forbes that the Wells Fargo CEO, Charles Scharf, recently blamed the, quote, limited pool of Black talent, end quote, for trouble reaching diversity goals. What are your ideas, recommendations to help battle this mentality?
I would boycott Wells Fargo. And essentially, where is he looking for his Black talent? Why not have him look at COMTO or other national Black organizations, or expose him to the historical Black colleges and universities across this nation where he can be shown Black excellence?
Anybody else? If no one else want to chime in on that for the sake of another question, that's what my original reaction to that was that it was frankly a reflection of the limited talent in recruiting that would lead to one not being able to find Black talent. So,
well, go ahead.
Please,
I would say, where are they looking? I mean, because if you're looking for Black talent, you probably need to go to publications and where that Black talent can be found. Another thing, there's a lot of biases in recruiting. Eliminate names off resumes, so you're not biased by what name is on that resume. Some people have even gone to not even looking at the person when they're recruiting. But I don't buy that. I just think that there's unconscious bias when people are hiring, even from looking at a name on a resume, and they're not looking in the right place.
I was just going to say that boycotting, I think, is definitely one strategy, but I actually think this is actually an opportunity, again, to lean in on executives like him, because he's just the only one that has said it, right? We know that there are others that believe it and they act in that spirit, but they just aren't stupid enough to say it like the CEO of Wells Fargo. But I think it's an opportunity for us to lean in and continue to put pressure on organizations like Wells Fargo, and not just crack the nut on their executive recruitment, board membership, et cetera, but also to look at all of to call into question all of their other practices, including lending, community banking, mortgage lending, et cetera. I mean, we know Wells Fargo has been a bad actor. We've known that for the last 20 or 30 years that they've been a bad actor. So I think instead of boycotting, I think it's about putting pressure on them legislatively through our congressional representatives to really think about restructuring or eliminating Wells Fargo altogether, not just boycotting it, but literally breaking it up and eliminating it.
So why not have Brad Mims reach out to the chairman of Wells Fargo?
We already have. We got a letter out yesterday.
Great.
Yeah, it's like
we got a letter out yesterday too.
What are they doing to help fund? What are they doing to help fund our minority contractors, creating resources for them to bank them, and to creating resources for them to be able to access the capital they need? I mean, there's lots of other things that we can do to an organization like Wells Fargo than just not spend our money with them.
Right. And you get, again, it's just like you said, David, you got to lean in on them. And we've gotten a communication out to them already. So.
Right.
And the only last thing I add is, what does their board and around the table look like? Who's helping to guide them and make that decision?
Thank all of you. Thank all of you. This was, I figured we'd get something strong off of that question. So thank you, Mr. Delgado, for sure that. We're coming to a close. I want to make this the final question, and I think it's an appropriate one for us to end on. And this is from Isa Shauri. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And I'm going to just I'm going to read the question directly. As a professional in the civil rights space and in transportation, lately I feel that the buzzword has become diversity and inclusion. As also a marketing professional, I'm worried that the phrase has become too mainstream and may hurt our efforts toward addressing structural racism practices and organically investing in changing the culture. So what are your thoughts on how we can still maintain the integrity and mission of what diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts mean in the community and industry? I want to go down the list. I'm going to ask y'all to go in this order to make sure we get everybody before our time. So I want to start with you, Sandra, then we'll go to Michael, David, and Tamela. So Sandra, please.
Hi, I think I touched based on it a little bit, and that's regarding the laws that came before us to recognize what the work that we do, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, all of the federal laws that to try to eliminate discrimination. While the name is changing to a more contemporary name, the mission, we can't take our focus off the mission and the intent of what the law stood for. So I'm not too worried about it being watered down. I think if we continue to do the work that we do, continue to make sure that we are champions, standing strong to eliminate discrimination and make sure that our DBEs have a fair opportunity to compete, and not only compete, win contracts, I think we'll be okay.
So data is going to tell the whole story. And so we're one of the only agencies in the state of New York that breaks down our data with respect to ethnic. And so we can tell you how many Black businesses have been paid last year. It was in excess of 100 million. Hispanics, Latinx, Eastern Indian, and WBEs. When you find out that government taxpayers' dollars are not being awarded or paid in an inclusive manner, then you must come up with programs that's going to offset that and come up with strategies and solutions that will eradicate barriers to entry so that those Black businesses, those Asian businesses, those Hispanic or Latinx businesses can have access to contracts. And when we're paying those contracts, we're tracking payments. And so, yes, I mean, historically, everybody is using the buzzword now, but I align 1968 to 2020. 1968, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, the Vietnam War, racial unrest in the streets. Now we are mired in a economic pandemic. We are mired in a health pandemic. We are mired in international and national civil rights protests. So let's make this not a moment, but let's make it a movement that we are going to drive effective and efficient change. And diversity is going to be more than a buzzword. It's going to be reflected on your bottom line. How many contracts are being awarded to minority and women-owned and disadvantaged businesses? Of those payments, how many of those are being paid in an inclusive manner?
Okay. Michael, thank you. I think you literally hit the nail on the head. It's about measurables, right? We have to be willing, you know, what's the old saying? We respect what we inspect, right? So if we have the data and we're looking at the data, we'll be able to hold people accountable. But I think more to the point, the argument was about structural racism versus DEI. And I think in the chat, I equated it to a project of like flipping a house. You know, dealing with structural racism is like taking this flip house that I bought and stripping it down to the studs. That's the structural racism part. You tear it all the way down, you firm up the infrastructure. And then you come in with DEI, which is your stylistic approach, your philosophical approach. And then you go in and you build up from that skeletal framework and you flesh out the house that can become a home for everybody in your community. Black, white, Hispanic, gay, straight, male, female, whatever groups you want to measure in terms of your diversity. I think you have to lead with addressing structural racism. And then the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece comes in as how you're going to approach creating the new environment. And so I think, you know, to the person that offered the question, I believe that DEI is important. I believe that it is a good contemporary approach, but we can't, you're right, we can't just do that. We can't just slap a new coat of paint on an old rickety house. We have to strip it to the studs, which means get down to the structural racism and understand how this system was created to benefit the people that it creates, and then create a new system with a new vision, which is your DEI approach.
I think we have to stop talking about it and start doing it. You know, in light of these recent circumstances, every so often this happens, we have the movement, and everyone just kind of goes back to normal. And there's really no serious change because there's no serious talk about what is driving racism. And we have to be able to put it out on the table, and we have to be able to provide a comfort level for folks in the organizations to talk about it. And people need to vote. They need to vote for people that are going to change it at a national level, at your city level, at your local level. It's time to start doing. It's time to stop doing businesses with companies that discriminate. If your companies that you're doing business with aren't working with MWBs outside of your agency, you shouldn't be doing business with them. You know, so I think we need to start talking about what can we do to make it safe to talk about racism, change policies, change practices, and stop doing businesses with people that discriminate.
That's a really great point to end on. We are out of time, everyone, but I want to thank this Braintrust in the truest sense of the phrase for coming together and offering these perspectives about how we move forward in a substantive way to create more space and opportunity for more people, more communities, more business owners, because I believe that we have so much potential. With all that we have accomplished, we still have so much more potential to realize. And so as we choose to invest in one another, invest in our communities, I thank all of you for being a part of that. Mr. President, if I may give you the final word.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, I truly appreciate you moderating this panel, this very interesting panel. As we're going forward, there's so many issues that were raised and so many issues that we haven't addressed, but we got to the core of many very, very good issues. So again, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, as well as we thank Congresswoman Norton for her very strong statement in the beginning of this Braintrust. And then I'd like to thank the panel here. You guys have done an excellent job of informing us about the issues from your various jurisdictions and your various institutions. So David, Michael, Sandra, Norman, and to Ms. Lee, we really, really appreciate your participation this afternoon, this evening. So the other thing I want to do is give great thanks to our Legislative Advisory Committee and our chair, Renee Banks, and chairs Renee Banks and Karen Camplin for their hard work in putting this Braintrust together. And again, we couldn't have done that without them. Renee, I know that you wanted to say something very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. I just wanted to emphasize the takeaway of this event. I will go through the points that were made and incorporate many of what was said into our legislative agenda for 2021-22. And I invite anybody who's interested to just reach out to me if you're interested in serving on the council next year. We could use your help. And I appreciate all the hard work that everyone put into this event. I think it was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Two other quick points. For those of you who are not members of COMTO who would like to become members, please go to comtonational.org, click that join COMTO thing that we have there, and please join COMTO. We look forward to sharing your membership and having your input. And again, we look forward to celebrating COMTO Gold in 2021. COMTO will be 50 years old next year. And during our national conference, we're going to have a host of activities that celebrate us as we enter our 50th year. My last point for everybody here, and I don't have to tell everybody here on this call, everybody must vote. And I know that point was made earlier, but please get out and vote. Encourage others around you to vote. And in that way, we would be able to do what we need to do to make changes, the changes that need to be made in this country. So with that, we wrap up. And I thank all of you for visiting with us today. Have a great day, everyone.